On the night of her extravagant wedding in downtown Chicago, Madison Hale only wanted a moment to breathe. The ballroom at Lakeview Grand Hall glittered with crystal chandeliers, white roses, and the polished smiles of Chicago's wealthiest families. Cameras flashed endlessly while guests waited for the bride and groom to begin the next part of the reception. But as Madison walked past the private catering corridor near the restrooms, she heard something that made her stop cold. Her younger sister Vanessa was laughing behind the half-open door. Then came the voice of Madison's new husband, Ethan Calloway. Within seconds, Madison discovered the horrifying truth. The affair between Ethan and Vanessa had lasted for 3 years, and the marriage itself was part of a calculated scheme to seize control of her inheritance, company shares, and the Hale family fortune. Instead of collapsing in tears, Madison quietly reached into her clutch purse, pulled out her phone, and pressed record. Behind the door, Ethan discussed power of attorney papers, access to Hale Capital Group, and plans for a future divorce once he secured financial control over her assets. Vanessa mocked Madison openly, confident that their mother would manipulate her into trusting Ethan after the wedding. Every word shattered another piece of Madison's world. But by the time the recording ended, something inside her had changed. The devastated bride disappeared, and someone colder took her place. Minutes later, while hundreds of guests watched the giant projector screens inside the ballroom, Madison walked toward the DJ booth with the recording hidden in her hand. Tonight was supposed to be the happiest night of her life. Instead, it would become the night she publicly destroyed everyone who betrayed her. What none of them realized was that exposing the affair would only begin the war, because Ethan Calloway had no intention of losing access to the Hale fortune, and Madison was about to discover just how dangerous a man could become when greed mattered more than love. Madison Hale had spent most of her life being told to keep the peace. As the older daughter of Jonathan Hale, founder of Hale Capital Group, she had grown up under constant pressure to behave perfectly. Perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect public image. Meanwhile, Vanessa was always forgiven. When Vanessa screamed at teachers, Patricia Hale blamed emotional trauma. When Vanessa crashed a car at 19, Patricia said she was struggling emotionally. When Vanessa borrowed money and never paid it back, Madison was told to be understanding. For years, Madison convinced herself that patience was strength. Tonight finally proved how wrong she had been. Standing outside the catering corridor at Lakeview Grand Hall, Madison listened to her husband and sister laugh about destroying her life. "She trusts you completely," Vanessa whispered. Ethan chuckled softly. "That's because she needs to believe she's loved." Madison's fingers tightened around her phone. The recording timer continued moving upward. "She'll sign everything," Vanessa continued. "Mom already agreed to help pressure her after the honeymoon." Ethan lowered his voice. "Good. Once I gain legal access to the accounts and company holdings, we'll move faster." Move faster. Madison suddenly understood everything. The rushed conversations about estate planning, the repeated suggestions that Ethan should become more involved in company operations, the pressure to combine financial assets immediately after marriage. None of it had been love. It had been preparation. A cold wave of nausea rolled through her stomach, but Madison forced herself to stay silent. No crying, not here. Not for them. Inside the ballroom, guests applauded as the DJ announced the upcoming wedding montage. Vanessa laughed quietly again. "Can you imagine her face if she knew you spent last night with me instead of writing your vows?" Ethan sighed impatiently. "Stop. We just need to survive tonight." Madison finally stopped recording. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Enough to ruin them both. She saved the file immediately and uploaded a backup copy to cloud storage before either of them walked out. For a brief moment, She leaned against the cold marble wall and closed her eyes. Her chest hurt so badly it felt difficult to breathe. 3 years, every kiss, every promise, every family holiday, all fake. A tear slid down her cheek. Madison wiped it away instantly. That was the last tear she would shed for Ethan Calloway. The corridor door opened suddenly. Vanessa stepped out first, adjusting her emerald green bridesmaid dress. The moment she saw Madison, her expression froze, only for half a second. Then the fake sweetness returned. "There you are," Vanessa smiled brightly. "Everyone's looking for you." Madison stared at her younger sister carefully. For the first time, she truly saw her. Not insecure, not wounded, not misunderstood, just jealous and dangerous. A few seconds later, Ethan appeared behind Vanessa. His confident smile flickered when he noticed the phone in Madison's hand. "Madison," he said cautiously, "is everything okay?" Their eyes locked, and for the first time since they met, Ethan looked uncertain. Madison smiled calmly. A lot of things became very clear tonight. Before either of them could respond, she walked past them and headed back toward the ballroom, toward the guests, toward the massive projector screens glowing beside the dance floor, toward the moment that would destroy the illusion of the perfect wedding forever. Behind her, she could already hear Ethan calling her name. The ballroom lights shimmered across hundreds of crystal glasses as Madison walked back into the reception hall. No one noticed the storm behind her eyes. The guests were too busy laughing, drinking champagne, and waiting for the next stage of the celebration. Near the center dance floor, the giant projector screens glowed softly with a frozen image from Madison and Ethan's engagement photo shoot. The perfect couple, the perfect lie. At the head table, Patricia Hale adjusted Vanessa's bracelet nervously while speaking to one of the investors from Hale Capital Group. Vanessa had somehow already slipped back into character, smiling sweetly as if she hadn't just confessed to betraying her own sister moments earlier. Madison almost admired the performance. Almost. Her maid of honor, Lauren Brooks, spotted her first. Lauren's smile disappeared instantly. "Madison," she whispered, rushing closer. "What happened?" Madison leaned toward her friend carefully. "If I do something shocking in the next 5 minutes," she said quietly, "don't stop me." Lauren's face went pale. Before she could ask another question, the DJ's voice thundered through the ballroom speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally time for the Hale Calloway love story montage." Applause erupted across the room. Ethan reached for Madison's hand. She calmly stepped away from him. That tiny movement immediately caught his attention. "Madison?" he murmured, but she was already walking toward the DJ booth. The ballroom gradually quieted as guests noticed the bride moving away from the groom during the middle of the announcement. Madison climbed the small platform beside the sound system and reached for the microphone. The DJ blinked in confusion. "Mrs. Calloway." "No," Madison interrupted softly. "Not anymore." A nervous ripple moved through the crowd. Ethan stood slowly from his chair. Patricia frowned. Vanessa's smile began to fade. Madison looked across the ballroom, filled with executives, lawyers, old family friends, and reporters from Chicago society magazines. Then she spoke calmly into the microphone. "Before the video plays," she said, "there's something else I'd like everyone here to hear first." Complete silence fell over the ballroom. Even the waiters stopped moving. Madison handed her phone to the DJ. "Please connect this to the speakers," she said. The DJ hesitated. Ethan moved immediately. "Madison," he warned quietly, "don't do this." She finally looked directly at him. For the first time all night, Ethan Calloway looked afraid. "Too late," she replied. Lauren moved closer to the stage instinctively, as if preparing for disaster. Vanessa stood up so quickly her champagne glass tipped over. "Madison, what are you doing?" Patricia whispered sharply. Madison ignored them all. The auxiliary cable connected with a soft click. On the massive projector screens, the wedding slideshow disappeared and was replaced by a dark screen showing a moving audio waveform. A few guests exchanged confused looks. Then the recording began. God, she's unbelievably naive. Vanessa's voice echoed across the ballroom. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Ethan lunged toward the DJ booth instantly. "Turn that off!" But one of Jonathan Hale's former business partners, Charles Whitmore, stepped directly into Ethan's path. "No," Charles said coldly. "Let it play." The recording continued. "She signed the marriage license already," Vanessa laughed through the speakers. "Now we just need the paperwork afterward." Patricia's face drained of color. Across the ballroom, people stared at Vanessa with open horror. Then Ethan's voice filled the room. "Once I gain legal access to the accounts and company holdings, we'll move faster." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Someone near the back dropped a champagne glass. The sound shattered across the marble floor. Madison stood perfectly still while her entire world exploded around her. On the recording, Vanessa mocked her openly. Ethan discussed power of attorney documents and future divorce plans. Every sentence stripped away another layer of their carefully crafted image. By the time the recording ended, the ballroom no longer looked like a wedding reception. It looked like the scene of a public execution. And Ethan Calloway was staring at Madison like he suddenly realized the woman he planned to manipulate had become far more dangerous than he ever imagined. For several seconds after the recording ended, nobody moved. The ballroom remained trapped in stunned silence, while the final echo of Ethan's voice faded from the speakers. Then chaos erupted. Vanessa shot to her feet first. "This is insane!" she screamed. "She edited it!" Her voice cracked with panic, but the damage had already been done. No one looked convinced. Guests stared openly at the bride's sister, with expressions ranging from disgust to fascination. Across the ballroom, phones slowly began appearing in people's hands beneath the tables. Chicago society loved scandal, and tonight's scandal would become legendary. Patricia Hale finally found her voice. "Madison," she whispered harshly, "turn this into a private conversation right now." Madison looked at her mother calmly. "A private conversation," she repeated softly. "Like the private affair Vanessa had with my husband for 3 years. Patricia flinched. Ethan stepped forward quickly, forcing confidence back into his expression. "Everyone needs to calm down," he announced loudly. "This recording was taken completely out of context." Charles Whitmore laughed coldly near the front tables. "Out of context?" he repeated. "You literally discussed stealing company access and planning a divorce." Ethan's jaw tightened. Lauren moved beside Madison protectively, while several guests quietly backed away from the Calloway family table, as though betrayal itself might be contagious. Vanessa pointed at Madison with trembling rage. "You wanted this," she snapped. "You always needed to humiliate me." Madison stared at her sister in disbelief. "You slept with my fiancé for 3 years. And you had everything," Vanessa screamed back. "The money, the company, Dad's attention, everything." There it was, the truth beneath all the jealousy. Not love, not passion, envy. Raw and poisonous. Patricia grabbed Vanessa's arm desperately. "Stop talking." But Vanessa yanked herself free. "No, she needs to hear this." Vanessa's mascara had started running now, but her fury only intensified. "Do you know what it's like living beside someone perfect your entire life? Everyone worshipped Madison, while Mom kept telling me to be grateful for scraps." Madison felt something inside her finally snap loose. For years, she had carried guilt she never deserved. Years spent apologizing for existing comfortably, while Vanessa weaponized pain against everyone around her. And now, Vanessa had destroyed her wedding because she believed happiness itself was something to steal. Ethan suddenly stepped closer to Madison. "Enough," he hissed quietly. "You made your point." His voice had changed again. No warmth, no charm, only anger. Madison met his gaze steadily. "My point?" she said softly. "No, Ethan. I'm just getting started." Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. "You're emotional right now," he warned. "You'll regret doing this publicly." There it was again. Not remorse. A threat. Lauren instantly stepped between them, back away from her. Ethan ignored her completely. "We're legally married," he said to Madison in a low voice meant only for her. "That matters whether you like it or not." The words sent a chill through her chest, not because she feared him, because she finally understood him. Even after public exposure, Ethan's first instinct was still calculation. Marriage license, legal status, access, leverage. Madison slowly removed her diamond wedding ring. The massive stone caught the ballroom lights one final time before she placed it carefully on the champagne table beside them. Gasps spread through the room again. "I will be filing for an annulment," she announced clearly. "Tomorrow morning." Ethan's expression darkened instantly. "You think it's that simple?" "No," Madison replied calmly. "I think it's going to become very expensive for you." Several executives from Hale Capital exchanged glances immediately. They understood exactly what she meant. Fraud, corporate conspiracy, financial manipulation. This was no longer just adultery. This was legal warfare. Patricia looked physically ill now. "Madison, please," she whispered. "Don't destroy the family over one terrible mistake." Madison turned toward her mother slowly. "One mistake?" she repeated. "Mom, they built an entire relationship around destroying me." Patricia had no response, because deep down, she knew Madison was right. Ethan suddenly reached for Madison's wrist. "You're not walking away from me tonight." Before he could touch her, Charles Whitmore stepped forward again. "You should rethink putting your hands on her," he said quietly. The warning in his voice was unmistakable. Ethan released a slow breath and stepped back. For the first time that evening, he realized he was losing control of the room. And Madison realized something else. The wedding was over, but the real battle had only just begun. Madison left the ballroom without looking back. Behind her, the reception had dissolved into shouting, whispers, and frantic damage control. Guests crowded around tables pretending not to gossip while openly dissecting the destruction of the Hale wedding in real time. Lauren followed closely beside her as they crossed the marble lobby of Lakeview Grand Hall. "Your car's outside," Lauren said carefully. Madison nodded without speaking. Her body felt strangely numb now, as though the shock had burned itself out completely and left only exhaustion behind. Outside, cold Chicago air slammed against her skin. The black SUV waited beneath the glowing entrance lights, while photographers gathered across the street, already sensing scandal. Lauren quickly shielded Madison from the cameras. "Head down," she muttered. Flashbulbs exploded instantly anyway. "Madison, is the wedding canceled? Did Ethan cheat with your sister? Are you filing charges?" Madison ignored every question and climbed into the SUV. The moment the door closed, silence swallowed her. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Madison's phone vibrated. "Ethan." The screen glowed brightly in the darkness. Lauren looked over immediately. "Don't answer." Madison declined the call. The phone rang again instantly, then again. Then texts started arriving. "We need to talk. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You're overreacting." Madison stared at the messages blankly. Not a single apology. Not one. Only anger about humiliation. A cold laugh escaped her throat unexpectedly. Lauren looked at her carefully. "You okay?" "No," Madison answered honestly. but I think I finally understand who I married." Another message appeared. "You are still my wife." That one made her stomach tighten, because beneath the manipulation and betrayal, Ethan was reminding her of something very real. The marriage certificate existed. Legally, he was tied to her now, and men like Ethan never released valuable things willingly. By the time they reached Lauren's apartment in River North, Madison had over 30 unread messages from Ethan, Patricia, and Vanessa combined. Vanessa's texts were furious. "You ruined everything. You always needed to be the victim. Dad would hate what you became." That last one hurt, not because Madison believed it, but because Vanessa knew exactly where to aim the knife. Jonathan Hale had adored both daughters, but he trusted Madison with the future of Hale Capital Group because she was disciplined, intelligent, and emotionally steady. Vanessa had always hated that. Inside Lauren's apartment, Madison finally slipped off her heels and sat heavily on the couch. The silence around her felt surreal after the chaos of the ballroom. Lauren handed her a glass of water. "What's the plan now?" Madison stared at her phone. "My father's attorney," she said quietly. "Victoria Bennett." Lauren nodded immediately. "Good." Because Victoria Bennett was not known for mercy. The woman specialized in corporate litigation, asset protection, and high-conflict divorces involving wealthy families. Exactly the kind of lawyer Ethan should fear. As if summoned by the thought itself, Madison's phone rang again. This time, it was Patricia. Madison hesitated before answering. Her mother sounded exhausted immediately. "Madison," Patricia whispered, "please tell me where you are." "I'm safe." A shaky breath came through the line. "You shouldn't have done this publicly." Madison closed her eyes slowly. Even now, even after everything, her mother still cared more about appearances than betrayal. "They planned to steal from me, Mom." "Vanessa made terrible choices," Patricia replied quickly. "But Ethan manipulated her too." Madison almost laughed. There it was. The excuse, the protection, the same pattern repeated again. "When exactly were you planning to tell me my sister was sleeping with my fiancé?" Patricia fell silent. That silence answered everything. Madison sat upright slowly. "You knew." "Not officially." "You knew." Patricia's breathing became uneven. "I suspected," she admitted quietly. "But I hoped it would end." Madison felt the final piece of trust collapse inside her chest. Not just Ethan, not just Vanessa. Her mother had betrayed her too. "I need time," Madison said coldly. "Please don't involve lawyers yet," Patricia begged. "Families survive things like this." "No," Madison replied softly. "Healthy families don't create things like this." She ended the call. For several seconds, Lauren said nothing. Then Madison's phone buzzed again. Another message from Ethan. "If you try to destroy me legally, I promise this will get ugly." Madison read the text twice, then calmly took a screenshot. Lauren saw her expression change. "What?" Madison looked toward the Chicago skyline outside the apartment windows. For the first time that night, her voice became completely steady. "He just threatened me," she said quietly. Then she opened her contacts and called Victoria Bennett. Victoria Bennett's office occupied the top floor of a glass tower overlooking downtown Chicago. By 9 the next morning, Madison sat across from the most feared corporate attorney in the city with a folder full of screenshots, a copy of the wedding recording, and barely 3 hours of sleep. Victoria listened without interrupting. No sympathy, no dramatic reactions, just cold attention. Lauren sat beside Madison while rain streaked across the massive windows behind them. When the recording finally ended, Victoria removed her glasses slowly. "Well," she said calmly, "your husband is either astonishingly arrogant or catastrophically stupid." Madison let out a weak breath. "Probably both." Victoria nodded once. "Good. Arrogant people leave evidence." For the first time since the wedding, Madison felt something close to stability. Not comfort, not safety, but structure. Victoria opened a yellow legal pad and began writing quickly. "First," she said, "you are not speaking to Ethan directly anymore." Madison handed over the screenshot of Ethan's threat from the night before. Victoria's eyes narrowed immediately. "Interesting. He's already panicking." "He keeps repeating that we're legally married," Madison said quietly, "because legally married is currently the only weapon he has." Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Listen carefully, Madison. Men like Ethan don't marry for love. They marry for access, status, positioning. Your recording makes that obvious." Madison stared down at her hands. Hearing it spoken aloud somehow hurt more. Victoria continued, "The affair matters emotionally. The fraud matters legally." That sentence changed everything. Up until now, Madison had still viewed the disaster as heartbreak. Victoria was teaching her to see it as strategy. "What do we do?" Lauren asked. Victoria's expression hardened. "We destroy his leverage before he can use the marriage certificate against her." She began outlining the plan. "Freeze any attempt at financial access. Notify Hale Capital Group that Ethan possessed zero authority over company operations. Secure the original recording in multiple locations. Preserve all threatening texts. Subpoena security footage from Lakeview Grand Hall. Collect witness statements immediately before stories changed." The list continued growing. Madison realized Ethan had accidentally triggered something dangerous by threatening her. He had activated Victoria Bennett's professional instincts. "And the annulment?" Madison asked. Victoria folded her hands together. "We pursue fraud-based annulment instead of divorce." "What's the difference?" "Divorce ends a marriage," Victoria explained. "Annulment legally argues the marriage should never have existed in the first place." Lauren looked impressed. Madison looked hopeful for the first time all morning. "But fraud cases are difficult," Victoria continued carefully. "Infidelity alone won't win this. We need to prove Ethan entered the marriage specifically to manipulate your assets." Madison immediately remembered the conversations about power of attorney, the pressure regarding financial integration, the questions about company structure. Slowly, more memories surfaced. "He asked about voting rights on the Hale board," she said suddenly. "A week before the wedding." Victoria looked up instantly. "Did anyone witness that?" "Yes, Charles Whitmore." "Excellent." Victoria wrote his name down immediately. Then Madison remembered something else. "There are emails." Victoria paused. "What kind of emails?" "Estate planning suggestions, financial access discussions. He sent draft documents for post-marriage account integration." Lauren's eyes widened. "Oh my God." Victoria smiled slightly for the first time. "There's the beginning of intent." Madison suddenly understood how serious this situation truly was. Ethan hadn't merely betrayed her emotionally. He had built a paper trail, a dangerous one. Victoria stood and walked toward the window overlooking Chicago's skyline. "You need to prepare yourself," she said quietly, "because Ethan is not going to surrender gracefully." Madison already knew that. The threats proved it. "He'll fight publicly," Victoria continued. "He'll claim emotional misunderstanding. He'll call you unstable, impulsive, vindictive. He'll try to delay proceedings and pressure you into settlement." "Can he do that?" "Yes." The honesty hit hard. Victoria turned back toward her, but he made one fatal mistake. Madison looked up carefully. "He underestimated your intelligence." Silence filled the office for a moment. Then Madison's phone vibrated again. Another text from Ethan. "I can still fix this if you stop embarrassing me publicly." Victoria held out her hand immediately. "May I?" Madison passed her the phone. Victoria read the message once and smiled coldly. "He still thinks this is about humiliation," she said. "That's good." "Why?" "Because he still doesn't realize he's walking into a fraud investigation." At that exact moment, Someone knocked sharply on the office door. Victoria's assistant stepped inside, looking tense. "Ms. Bennett," she said carefully. "Ethan Calloway is downstairs, demanding to see Madison." The room went completely still. Then Victoria closed Madison's file slowly. "Perfect," she said, and suddenly she looked ready for war. Victoria Bennett did not rush. That alone unnerved Madison. While the assistant waited near the doorway, Victoria calmly organized the legal files on her desk, adjusted the sleeve of her charcoal blazer, and looked toward Madison with absolute composure. "Good," she said quietly. "Let's see how desperate your husband already is." Madison's stomach tightened at the word husband. Lauren crossed her arms immediately. "He shouldn't even know she's here." "Oh, he knows," Victoria replied coolly. "Men like Ethan always know where their leverage is being threatened." She stood and motioned toward the hallway. "Come with me, but let me do the talking." The private elevator carried them down toward the lobby in heavy silence. Madison could feel her heartbeat pulsing harder with every descending floor. Not fear, anticipation, because she already understood something important now. The charming version of Ethan was gone. What remained underneath was the real man, and she needed to see him clearly. The elevator doors opened directly into the marble lobby of Bennett Legal Group. Ethan stood near the reception desk holding an enormous bouquet of white roses. The performance was almost laughable. Expensive suit, controlled expression, wounded eyes, carefully arranged for maximum sympathy. Even the receptionist looked uncomfortable. The moment Ethan saw Madison, relief flashed across his face. "There you are." Victoria stepped forward instantly. "Mr. Calloway," she said smoothly, "future communication goes through my office." Ethan barely looked at her. He stared only at Madison. "You disappeared." Madison almost laughed at the absurdity. "You cheated on me with my sister for 3 years. His jaw tightened. "We need to talk privately." "No," Victoria interrupted. "You need to leave." Ethan finally acknowledged her presence. "And you are?" "Victoria Bennett, counsel for Madison Hale." Something shifted in Ethan's expression immediately. Recognition, concern. He knew exactly who she was. Chicago's corporate circles were small. Victoria Bennett had destroyed executives twice as powerful as Ethan. Still, he recovered quickly. "This is a misunderstanding," he said calmly. "An emotional overreaction." Madison stared at him in disbelief. Even now, even after public exposure, he still believed he could manipulate the narrative. "You discussed stealing my assets on a recording," she said coldly. Ethan lowered his voice carefully. "You recorded a private conversation illegally." Victoria smiled slightly. "There it is." Ethan frowned. "There what is?" The complete absence of remorse. Silence stretched across the lobby. Several employees nearby pretended not to watch, while clearly listening to every word. Ethan took a slow breath and shifted tactics instantly. The softer version returned. "Madison," he said quietly, "I love you." The words landed like ash, dead, meaningless. "You loved my company," she replied. His eyes darkened briefly. "No marriage survives public humiliation like that. No honest marriage requires secret recordings to expose fraud." For the first time, his mask slipped completely. Anger flashed openly across his face. "You think you can destroy me?" Victoria answered before Madison could. "If necessary." Ethan laughed once, short and sharp. "You're turning this into a corporate war over a personal mistake." 3 years of deception and documented financial targeting is not a mistake, Victoria replied. "It's evidence." That word hit him. Evidence. Madison saw it happen in real time. The realization. This was no longer emotional chaos. It was becoming legal danger. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks slowly, regaining control. You're pushing her toward litigation because that's profitable for your firm. No, Victoria said calmly. I'm protecting her from a predator. The silence afterward turned razor sharp. Ethan stepped closer toward Madison. You know what happens if this becomes public court record. Madison held his gaze steadily. It already became public the moment you betrayed me. You'll destroy your mother's reputation, Vanessa's life, Hale Capital's image. There it was. The real strategy. Pressure. Fear. Shame. He was trying to make her carry responsibility for everyone else again, the same emotional trap she had lived inside her entire life. But this time, Madison saw it clearly, and once manipulation becomes visible, it loses power. Victoria noticed the shift in Madison immediately. Good. Ethan noticed it too. His expression hardened further. You're still my wife, he said quietly. Legally, that matters. Victoria stepped between them, for now. Something dangerous flickered behind Ethan's eyes. Then he smiled suddenly, cold, controlled. Fine, he said softly. If we're doing this publicly, then let's do it properly. Madison felt ice crawl down her spine because she finally understood. Ethan wasn't trying to save the marriage anymore. He was preparing to punish her for escaping him. And as he turned and walked toward the revolving glass doors, he delivered one final sentence without looking back. You should tell your lawyer to prepare for a very long fight. By the following afternoon, the scandal had spread across Chicago, not officially, not through newspapers yet, but through private messages, whispered phone calls, exclusive social circles, and corporate gossip moving faster than wildfire through dry grass. Madison's ruined wedding had become the city's favorite secret. Lauren stood in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone with visible disgust. They're already spinning the story. Madison looked up from Victoria's legal paperwork spread across the dining table. How bad? Lauren hesitated. Ethan's mother's telling people you had an emotional breakdown because you were jealous of Vanessa. Madison let out a hollow laugh. Of course she was. Cynthia Calloway had spent years cultivating the image of a perfect family. Wealthy people protected reputations like survival depended on it. Sometimes it did. Lauren tossed a phone onto the counter. And Patricia still hasn't publicly defended you. That hurt more than Madison expected. Not because she needed protection anymore, but because silence itself was becoming betrayal. Her own mother knew the truth. Yet Patricia remained hidden inside the Hale family estate, avoiding calls, while Ethan and Vanessa quietly rewrote the narrative outside. Madison picked up another legal document from Victoria's office. Asset protection notices, temporary restrictions, corporate authorization freezes. Everything now revolved around defense, not healing, not grief, war. Her phone suddenly buzzed across the table. Patricia. Madison stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. Her mother sounded exhausted. Can we meet? Madison almost refused immediately, but something inside her needed to hear what Patricia would say face to face. 1 hour, she replied finally. At the house, the Hale estate sat along Lakeshore Drive, overlooking gray winter water. Madison had not returned since the wedding. Walking through the front doors now felt strangely unfamiliar, like entering the museum of someone else's childhood. The house smelled exactly the same. Fresh lilies, polished wood, expensive silence. Patricia waited in the sitting room, holding untouched tea. The moment Madison entered, her mother stood quickly. For a second, she looked close to tears. Then her social training snapped back into place. You look tired. Madison remained standing. I was publicly betrayed at my wedding. Patricia flinched. I know. No, Madison replied quietly. You knew before the wedding. The room went still. Patricia lowered her eyes. I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Her mother gripped the teacup tightly. Because Vanessa swore it was over. Madison stared at her in disbelief. You chose to believe her instead of protecting me. It wasn't that simple. Yes, Madison said coldly. It actually was. Patricia's composure finally cracked. You don't understand what it was like raising Vanessa after her father disappeared. There it is, Madison whispered. The excuse. Again. Always the excuse. Patricia's voice trembled now. She was broken, Madison, and now I'm the one broken. Silence filled the room heavily. Patricia suddenly looked older than Madison remembered, not weaker, just tired. Years of guilt had shaped every decision she made regarding Vanessa. And now the consequences sat directly in front of her. I never wanted this to happen, Patricia admitted softly, but you allowed it to happen. Her mother couldn't deny that. Madison slowly walked toward the fireplace, where childhood photographs lined the mantel. Pictures from birthdays, graduations, charity galas. Years of smiling through dysfunction. Then one photograph caught her attention. Jonathan Hale standing between his daughters. Madison remembered the exact day it was taken. She had been 16. Vanessa had just been suspended from school for stealing exam answers. And somehow Patricia still convinced Madison to apologize for making Vanessa feel inferior. The realization hit like cold water. This hadn't started with Ethan. The betrayal inside this family had existed for years. Ethan simply exploited it. Behind her, Patricia spoke carefully. Vanessa is terrified right now. Madison turned slowly. She should be. She says Ethan manipulated her. Madison almost laughed. Mom, she mocked me while planning to steal from me. Patricia looked down. She's still my daughter, and I'm still yours. That sentence broke something between them. Patricia's eyes filled instantly. For once, no excuse came. No defense. No redirection, only silence. Madison finally understood something painful. Her mother loved her, but Patricia had spent so many years protecting Vanessa's weakness that she accidentally abandoned Madison's pain. And now the entire family was collapsing under the weight of that failure. As Madison turned toward the door, Patricia spoke one final time. Ethan came here yesterday. Madison stopped instantly. What? He wanted access to your father's financial archives. Every muscle in Madison's body tightened. Patricia looked horrified now. I told him no. Madison stared at her mother carefully. For the first time since the wedding, she believed her. And suddenly, the situation became even more dangerous than she imagined. Victoria Bennett did not like surprises, which was exactly why her expression darkened the moment Madison told her Ethan had visited the Hale estate, searching for Jonathan Hale's financial archives. He's accelerating, Victoria said immediately. The two women sat inside Victoria's conference room late that evening, while downtown Chicago glowed outside the windows like scattered gold beneath the rain. Lauren stood near the coffee station, listening silently. Madison folded her arms tightly. What does that mean? It means he's scared. Victoria opened Ethan's preliminary legal response across the table. He expected emotional fallout, public embarrassment, maybe even a messy divorce. Her eyes lifted sharply. He did not expect resistance. Madison thought about Ethan standing in the law office lobby, holding roses, like some tragic husband trying to save his marriage. The performance almost seemed pathetic now. Almost. Victoria slid another document forward. This arrived an hour ago. Madison picked it up carefully. Her stomach dropped instantly. Petition for marital asset review. Ethan was already demanding financial disclosure rights as Madison's legal spouse. Lauren swore under her breath. He moves fast. No, Victoria corrected calmly. He moves strategically. Madison kept reading. The filing requested preliminary access to property records, investment structures, trust distributions, and executive compensation connected to Hale Capital Group. Not emotional language, not heartbreak. Money. Every line practically screamed motive. Victoria tapped the paper lightly. This may actually help us. Madison looked up. He's proving intent himself. Suddenly another memory surfaced sharply in Madison's mind. 1 week before the wedding, Ethan, sitting inside her penthouse kitchen late at night, with his laptop open beside a stack of legal folders. At the time, she thought he was helping organize future financial planning. Now the memory felt poisonous. He drafted something, Madison said suddenly. Victoria's attention sharpened instantly. What kind of document? A proposed power of attorney agreement. Lauren stared. What? Madison nodded slowly. He said married couples needed emergency authority protections. Victoria leaned forward immediately. Did you sign it? No. Do you still have it? Madison's pulse quickened. Maybe. Without another word, she opened her cloud storage account and searched through archived attachments from Ethan. Dozens of emails appeared. Wedding vendors, travel confirmations, financial discussions. Then she found it. POA_draft_final. Victoria stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward. Open it. Madison clicked carefully. The document appeared across the conference screen. Silence filled the room. Even Lauren looked disturbed now. The proposed authority was unbelievably broad. Banking access, asset transfers, investment authority, corporate signing privileges, temporary executive control over specific Hale Capital accounts during marital emergencies. This isn't a husband helping pay utility bills, Victoria said coldly. This is attempted financial capture. Madison felt physically sick. Ethan had planned everything carefully. The marriage, the pressure campaign, the timing, the legal positioning. Even the language inside the draft was professionally calculated. Victoria immediately printed copies. This changes the case completely. At that exact moment, Madison's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Victoria held out her hand instantly. Speaker. Madison answered carefully. A soft female voice filled the room. Madison? Vanessa. Lauren muttered something furious under her breath. Madison's expression hardened immediately. What do you want? Vanessa sounded strangely unstable. Ethan's losing control. Victoria instantly grabbed a pen. Madison remained silent. Vanessa continued quickly. He's furious about the annulment. He thinks Victoria Bennett is turning you against him. Victoria almost smiled at that. He keeps saying the marriage license gives him rights, Vanessa whispered. And he's talking about dragging the case out until you break emotionally. Madison closed her eyes briefly. Exactly what Victoria predicted. Why are you telling me this? Madison asked coldly. A long silence followed. Then Vanessa answered softly. Because I think he might actually be dangerous. The room went still. Lauren stepped closer immediately. Victoria's face became unreadable. Madison felt ice spread through her chest. Dangerous how? He's obsessed now, Vanessa whispered. Not with me. Not even with you. Another pause. With winning. Madison remembered Ethan's face outside the law office. The coldness, the humiliation, the threat hidden beneath calm words. Vanessa inhaled shakily. There's something else. Victoria started writing immediately. He kept records, Vanessa said quietly. Texts, notes, plans, everything. Madison's pulse slammed hard. What kind of plans? Vanessa's voice nearly broke. Plans for how to gain control of Hale Capital after the wedding. Silence exploded across the conference room. Victoria spoke for the first time. Vanessa, she said calmly, do you still have access to those records? Another long pause followed. Then Vanessa whispered the sentence that changed everything. Yes. And suddenly, Ethan Calloway's entire future became vulnerable. Madison did not trust her sister, not anymore. Maybe not ever again. So when Vanessa agreed to meet the following night, Victoria refused to allow the meeting anywhere private. No isolated locations, she said firmly. No emotional ambushes. No disappearing evidence. The meeting was arranged inside one of Victoria Bennett's secured conference rooms after business hours. By 8 o'clock, rain hammered against the skyscraper windows while tension swallowed the room whole. Lauren stood near the doorway with crossed arms. Victoria reviewed legal notes silently at the far end of the table. Madison waited. Then the conference room door opened. Vanessa walked inside slowly. For the first time in years, she looked genuinely afraid. Not dramatic, not manipulative. Afraid. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her oversized coat barely concealed how badly her hands were shaking. Lauren's expression hardened immediately. "You've got 5 minutes before I forget basic human decency." "Lauren," Madison warned quietly. "No," Lauren snapped. "She helped destroy your life." Vanessa flinched, but didn't defend herself. That alone unsettled Madison more than anger would have. Victoria gestured toward the empty chair. "Sit down." Vanessa obeyed silently. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Finally, Madison broke the silence. "You said Ethan kept records." Vanessa swallowed hard. "Yes." "Why?" A bitter laugh escaped her throat. "Because Ethan trusted evidence more than people." Victoria's pen stopped moving instantly. Vanessa slowly opened her designer handbag and removed a silver flash drive. The room went completely still. Lauren stared at it like it was a grenade. Vanessa placed it carefully on the table. "He documented everything," she whispered. Madison's chest tightened painfully. "Everything?" Vanessa nodded once. "Timelines, financial plans, messages about your company, strategies for controlling the board after the wedding." Even Victoria looked disturbed now. "Did he know you kept copies?" "No." Vanessa's answer came instantly. "Then why keep them?" Vanessa looked directly at Madison for the first time. "Because somewhere deep down, I knew he would eventually betray me, too." Silence spread heavily through the room. Madison suddenly realized something tragic. Vanessa never truly trusted Ethan either. Their relationship had not been built on love. Only resentment, greed, and mutual manipulation. Victoria carefully picked up the flash drive. "If this contains what you claim," she said quietly, "Ethan Calloway's case collapses." Vanessa gave a hollow smile. "It's worse than you think." Without another word, Victoria connected the drive to a secure laptop. Folders immediately appeared across the screen. Messages, voice notes, financial spreadsheets, private timelines. Lauren muttered a curse under her breath. Then Victoria opened the first document. A detailed post-wedding strategy plan appeared. Week 1. Secure power of attorney signatures. Week 2. Gain indirect executive influence through Patricia. Week 4. Push Madison toward joint investment restructuring. Month 3. Begin positioning for future divorce leverage. Madison felt physically ill. Ethan had organized her life like a hostile takeover, not a marriage, an acquisition. Victoria opened another file. This time, text messages between Ethan and Vanessa filled the screen. "Once the board trusts me publicly, everything gets easier. Vanessa." Madison's still suspicious about financial integration. Then Patricia pressures her harder. Madison folds when family guilt gets involved. The room went dead silent. Even Lauren looked shaken now, because the messages proved something horrifying. Ethan understood Madison emotionally, with terrifying precision. He studied her weaknesses, her loyalty, her guilt, her need to protect family peace, and he weaponized all of it. Madison slowly lowered herself into a chair. Every new file stripped away another illusion. Then Victoria opened the final folder. Audio recordings, Vanessa suddenly spoke sharply. "Play the one from October." Victoria clicked carefully. Ethan's voice filled the conference room immediately. Calm, cold, confident. "Marriage isn't the objective," he said. "Control is. Once legal access exists, emotional attachment becomes irrelevant." Madison stopped breathing. The recording continued. "If she resists later, we stall proceedings. Wealthy families fear scandal more than betrayal." Victoria paused the audio slowly. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because there it was. Full intent. Clear motive. Premeditated fraud. Everything Ethan denied now existed in his own voice. Vanessa stared down at her trembling hands. "He changed after the engagement," she whispered. "At first, I thought he loved me more than he loved you." Madison looked at her sister carefully. "And now?" Vanessa's eyes filled with tears for the first time. "Now I think he only loved what you owned." The sentence shattered something final between them. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, just truth. Victoria immediately began organizing files. "We move fast," she said sharply. "Before Ethan realizes we have this." Madison looked toward the rain-covered windows overlooking Chicago. For the first time since her wedding night, the fear inside her began changing into something else. Power. Because Ethan Calloway no longer controlled the story. Now she controlled the evidence. And soon, the entire city would learn exactly what kind of man he truly was. 3 weeks later, the courtroom inside Cook County Family Court was completely packed. Executives from Hale Capital Group filled the back rows, beside reporters, attorneys, and members of Chicago's social elite, desperate to witness the collapse of Ethan Calloway in person. Rain battered the courthouse windows while tension pressed heavily against every wall. Madison sat beside Victoria Bennett wearing a charcoal gray suit instead of a wedding dress. The transformation felt symbolic. The naive bride who once believed love required endless sacrifice no longer existed. Across the courtroom, Ethan looked exhausted for the first time since the scandal began. Not emotional. Cornered. His expensive suit remained perfectly tailored, but the confidence underneath it had started cracking. Beside him sat his attorneys and both parents. Vanessa sat alone near the back. Patricia sat between her daughters, like a woman forced to face every failure she spent years avoiding. The judge entered sharply. Everyone rose, and the final battle began. Victoria wasted no time. She introduced the wedding recording first, then the threatening text messages, then the power of attorney draft, then the internal financial strategy documents retrieved from Vanessa's flash drive. The courtroom grew quieter with every piece of evidence, but the real destruction arrived when Victoria played Ethan's private audio recordings aloud. "Marriage isn't the objective," Ethan's recorded voice echoed through the courtroom. "Control is." Complete silence followed. One of the reporters stopped typing entirely. Victoria continued. "Once legal access exists, emotional attachment becomes irrelevant." Ethan's attorney immediately objected, but the damage had already spread through the room like poison. The judge leaned forward carefully. "Mr. Calloway," she said coldly, "are you claiming this recording was fabricated?" Ethan's composure finally slipped. "We were having private conversations taken out of context." Victoria stood immediately. "Then perhaps the court should review the strategic timelines regarding post-marriage asset acquisition." She displayed the documents across the courtroom monitors. Week 1. Secure power of attorney. Month 3. Position for divorce leverage. Corporate access projections. Board manipulation notes. Detailed financial targeting. The judge's expression hardened visibly. This no longer resembled marital conflict. It resembled corporate fraud. Victoria turned toward the bench calmly. The respondent entered this marriage under false pretenses, with documented plans to manipulate my client emotionally and financially for personal gain. Ethan stood suddenly. I loved her. Madison almost laughed. Even now, he still believed love was a useful word. Victoria remained calm. Then why did you repeatedly describe the marriage as leverage? Ethan had no answer. Because there wasn't one. For the first time in his life, charm failed him completely. The courtroom no longer saw a sophisticated husband fighting for reconciliation. They saw a man who viewed marriage like a business acquisition. The judge requested recess. As people slowly exited the courtroom, Ethan moved toward Madison quickly. "You think this makes you powerful?" he hissed quietly. Madison looked at him calmly. "No. I think the truth makes me free." His expression twisted instantly. "You destroyed both families." "No," she replied softly. "You did." Security officers stepped closer immediately as Ethan's anger became more visible. For a brief moment, Madison finally saw him clearly, without illusion. Not charismatic, not intelligent, just deeply entitled. A man who believed wealth, affection, and women themselves were things to possess. The judge returned 30 minutes later. Everyone stood once more. The ruling arrived quietly, but every word changed Madison's life forever. This court finds overwhelming evidence of fraudulent intent prior to and during the marriage agreement between Madison Hale and Ethan Calloway. The courtroom became perfectly still. The petition for annulment is granted immediately. Madison closed her eyes. A slow breath escaped her chest. The judge continued. All marital claims to financial access, property review, and corporate involvement are hereby terminated. Across the courtroom, Ethan's face turned pale with rage. "This isn't over," he snapped. The judge's expression sharpened instantly. "It is in this courtroom." Victoria calmly closed her legal folder. Done. Completely done. As people slowly began leaving, reporters surged toward the exits, while whispers spread across the courthouse. The scandal would dominate Chicago headlines for months, but Madison no longer cared. Outside, cold rain swept across the courthouse steps, while camera flashes exploded everywhere. "Madison, any statement? Do you forgive your sister? Was the marriage entirely fake?" Madison paused beneath the courthouse lights. For a moment, she thought about the wedding night, the hallway, the recording, the humiliation, the years spent apologizing for other people's cruelty. Then she looked directly toward the cameras. "I learned something important," she said calmly. "Love without honesty is manipulation, and family without loyalty is just performance." Silence followed. Then Madison turned away. Lauren walked beside her. Victoria followed behind them. Ahead waited Hale Capital Group, her future, her freedom. And for the first time in years, Madison walked toward it without carrying the weight of everyone else's betrayal on her shoulders. Behind her, Ethan Calloway remained standing alone in the rain while the life he tried to steal collapsed around him, piece by piece. And this time, Madison never looked back.